we should all want the American companies to win at this, right?
Yeah.
It's like, this is like a huge geopolitical competition, and like China's running at it super hard, and like we should want the American companies and the American standard to win.
That was Mark Zuckerberg, the founder of Facebook, talking to Joe Rogan over the weekend about US competing with China. But competing for what exactly? Well, in this case, they're talking about AI compute, but this also applies to Bitcoin as well, especially after this breaking news from the Meta shareholders this morning. Will Meta add Bitcoin to its balance sheet? What happens to Bitcoin's price if they do buy BTC? And then finally, what do the charts tell us in the short term? Because it looks like there might be a huge Bitcoin crash right around the corner. Now, that was Mark Zuckerberg and his gold chain glory, and more on that in a bit. But big news coming from Meta, aka the parent company of Facebook and Instagram. There's a proposal from the shareholders for a Bitcoin corporate treasury. And the reason in the proposal, due to its verifiable fixed supply, Bitcoin is the most inflation-resistant store of value available according to this proposal. Because when you have such a large balance sheet, like Meta does, a little bit of devaluation in your currency could have a major impact. We're talking about billions of dollars. Now, this proposal was submitted by Ethan Peck, and he's urging Meta to allocate a portion of their $72 billion in cash and short-term cash equivalents over to Bitcoin, mostly as a hedge against currency devaluation. And these numbers were pretty shocking to me. Peck wrote that Meta is losing 28% of its cash assets over time due to inflation, and cited that Bitcoin is outperforming bonds by over 1,000% over the last 5 years as evidence for why they should adopt this asset. He also wrote in this proposal, Mark Zuckerberg named his goats Bitcoin and Max. Meta director Mark Andreessen also has praised Bitcoin and is a director at Coinbase. Do Meta shareholders not deserve the same kind of responsible asset allocation for the company that the directors and executives likely implement for themselves? So he's basically saying these billionaires, they're smart. They're not just parking their cash on the sideline. So why should Facebook park their cash on the sideline? Now, this isn't what they're doing with their personal money, so why would Meta do it with their corporate balance sheet? Doesn't make any sense. Now, Peck is an employee at the National Center for Public Policy Research. This is the same think tank that submitted similar proposals to Microsoft and Amazon back in 2024. And the proposal recommended that Microsoft allocate at least 1% of their $484 billion, and the same Bitcoin treasury diversification strategy for Amazon as well. So Amazon, Microsoft, come on, just put 1% of your giant cash pile into Bitcoin. History will thank you. But for Meta, it might exceed 1%. The high volatility and lack of native yield-bearing opportunities are preventing tech firms from allocating 5 or more % of their assets to Bitcoin, so we could see any kind of recommendation from 1 to 5% that might be acted on. Now, is this going to happen in the short term? A little unlikely, but we do have Mark Zuckerberg. He's in the cage. He's fighting with these UFC fighters. This might increase the odds that he might be a non-consensus thinker, but I ask the question, what does this mean for Bitcoin's price long term? If they do add it to their balance sheet, are we looking at fireworks? Are we looking at, a little bit of a blip? Well, we have history, and history is Tesla. So Tesla added Bitcoin to their balance sheet. Now, they're buying in Q4 2020. December 2020, they invested $1.5 billion in Bitcoin. Now, if you recall, Meta has $72 billion in cash. So 1% would be about $700 million. 2%, you're looking at right at $1.5 billion. And as of December 31st, they had $19 billion in cash. So they spent about 7% of their cash on Bitcoin. And so asking Meta to spend 2% of their cash, very doable target. Both would be around the same range, $1.5 billion. Now, Tesla, they finally announced it February 8th, 2021. Because they had to do a quarterly report. So they bought in December, reported to the plebes in February. What did Bitcoin's price do? And then we're going to look at the short-term price dump that might be around the corner. But we got to go back to 2021. That's going to be this period right here. And if we look for February 8th, let me go ahead and stretch this a little bit. That is this giant green candle right here. You can see, giant wick to the upside. Started out pretty muted. $37,000. By the end of the next day, Bitcoin would go on a huge run, and the next day, 26% pump, adding $10,000 to the price tag. So it went from 38 to 48 in 1 day's time. Huge pump. And so if we saw a price action like that, where we're at right now, massive upside, I'll go ahead and run the numbers. 25% pump from here, you're looking around 115. So you're looking at a very good pump, all-time highs. It's going to be great. But I said there's some negative price action I needed to put on your radar. That's going to be this bear flag. It's just hard to spot if you're always bullish like me. So we talk about bull flag pennants all the time. There's also something called bear flags in the charts. And it does the exact opposite. It's the upside down pennant formation, and then it gives you a negative target, which we normally don't like to talk about, but it is important to realize that there are signs which normally I don't like to talk about, but there are signs that we could be heading lower, and it's my responsibility to tell you what we're seeing here. And so the same thing you see for the upside potential, you see for the downside potential. You would measure from the breakdown instead of the breakout. That gives us a pretty scary target of $83,000 Bitcoin. So we could see some short-term price action to the downside, but we have a very, very strong level for support that is literally fighting for its life. That is this giant yellow line. When we zoom back to the daily, that is the tops on a log chart for the 2021 peaks. We're going to move that right there. So this is April, and then this is going to be November. So Bitcoin put in a couple peaks there. And this is what we're looking at right now. When we go to the 1 hour, heck, let's even go to the 5-minute chart. You see there's a lot of action around this level. And so this is a very, very important level for Bitcoin. If we do break down below, that bear flag pennant is in the card. So just need to put that on your radar. If Meta adds Bitcoin, expect some fireworks. But if some of these important chart structures break down, folks, there's going to be a lot of pain. I'm DZ. That's all I got. I'll see you at the top.